Welcome back to Terra Gazette. Today we're going to be looking at the recent coup in Gabon and the facts surrounding the events which occurred on August 30th. Members of the military and presidential guard announced the moves hours after the election results confirmed a third term for incumbent President Ali Bongo. Gabon, a Central African nation of roughly 2.4 million people, of which 50% are under the age of 20, with a third of the total population living in extreme poverty. The nation boasts a GDP of over $20.2 billion US, with main exports being timber, petroleum, manganese, and iron. Oil accounts for up to 80% of Gabon's exports. It is sub-Saharan Africa's fourth biggest oil producer and a member of the OPEC cartel. 88% of the nation is covered in forestry, while 4/5 of the people live in cities. On August 30th, members of the military and presidential guard took to national television, nullifying election results. On this day, August 30th, 2023, we, the Defense and Security Forces, meeting within the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, CTRI, on behalf of the Gabonese people and guarantor of the protection of institutions, have decided to defend peace by putting an end to the current regime. The general elections of August 26, 2023, as well as the truncated results, are cancelled. The borders are closed until further notice. All institutions of the Republic are dissolved. Almost immediately, thousands took to the streets to express their support for the new government, while those in the West were quick to denounce the events. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, highlighted the inconsistencies in Gabon's elections. Meanwhile, US officials urged the Gabonese military to preserve civilian rule. The United Kingdom and Germany were also quick to denounce the military coup. Later that day, while under house arrest, President Bongo appeared on TV to make an appeal to his supporters, calling on citizens and friends of Gabon to make noise in rejecting the ongoing coup, while the African Union immediately convened an emergency meeting.
And I'm to send a message to all the friends that we have all over the world, to tell them to make noise, For the people here have arrested me, and my family. My son is somewhere, my wife is another place, and I'm at the residence.
Now this really isn't relevant to the coup, but a remarkable thing took place once this plea went out, and it's something I've never seen in comparable situations. I believe it's indicative of the sentiments felt by the African people. Not only were his pleas ignored, social media accounts seemed to be almost ridiculing the deposed leader.
To tell them to make noise. Tell them to make noise. Tell them to make noise. I'm calling you, my son, to make the noise. My wife. I'm Ali Bongo, Nguema, President of Gabon. And I'm to send a message to all the friends that we have all over the world. To tell them to make noise. To make noise. Tell them to make noise. Tell them to make noise. I'm calling you, my son, to make the noise. My wife.
What do Africans do? They make noise, but in a different way.
Hours after the coup took place, General Brice Oligui Nguema, head of Gabon's elite Republican Guard, charged with preventing military coups, was named transitional leader by unanimous vote, according to officials speaking on behalf of the coup government. On September 4th, just days later, Nguema was sworn in officially as a transitional head of state.
Gabon's junta leader, Brice Oligui Nguema, entering the presidential palace to a crowd of dignitaries, as if elected by the people after deposing President Bongo last Wednesday. Oligui is sworn in as what's being called the President of Transition. Cannons are fired, a reminder that the military is now in charge.
C'est sans aucune violence.
We have taken power without force or bloodshed and changed the regime that was in place. A regime that had taken hostage the Republican institutions for many years in complete disregard to democracy.
Soon after, the Economic Community of Central African States sent its envoy, Central African Republic President Faustin Archange Touadéra, to Libreville for talks with Oligui about drawing a roadmap back to constitutional order. One of Oligui's senior officials confirmed that the two had merely agreed at this stage to drawing up the blueprint. Now, if you watched our previous video on the coup in Niger, you would have learned about ECOWAS, the West African Bloc. In this case, Gabon is part of the Central African Bloc, its sister organization, and these two regional blocs are part of the 8 regional groups considered the building blocks of the African Union.
The Economic Community of Central African States, ECAS, is made up of 11 member states. One of its priorities is to enhance the region's capabilities for peace, security, and stability. It is also known by the French acronym CEEAC. ECAS was established on October 18, 1983, and reactivated in 1998 after a hibernation of 6 years. Following institutional reform, it acquired the status of Commission in December 2019. ECAS also created a Peace and Security Council for Central Africa to promote, maintain, and improve political stability in the region.
On Thursday, September the 7th, the coup leaders announced the appointment of a prominent critic of the deposed president, a man named Nguema, to become the interim prime minister. He had previously served as prime minister under Bongo from 2012 to 2014, then becoming a staunch opponent and campaigning against him. The newly appointed prime minister announced a 24-month transition period back to civilian rule.
Gabon's transitional prime minister said Sunday that the country needed at least 2 years to transition back to civilian rule. In an interview with AFP, Raymond Nguema, who was appointed head of government by the military last week, said he found 2 years to organize elections reasonable. The process that we have to carry out to reach this election is an inclusive one. Inclusive means that discussions and consultations will involve many people. So there will be a lot of back and forth, synthesis, restitutions, and validations of the results we get halfway through. As a result, I believe that this can be completed within 24 months.
Now let's take a second and look back at the incumbent and try to understand why these events may have unfolded the way they did. President Ali Bongo Ondimba had just secured his third term in office under what many saw as questionable and intimidating election conditions, which would have seen him extend his already 14-year rule. Voting in the last election was conducted under an internet shutdown, with the rest of local election monitors, and a series of last-minute legislative rule changes that favored the incumbent Bongo's party. They even went so far as to implement a last-minute single ballot change, meaning presidential, legislative, and local candidates from the same party would automatically be grouped together. If you voted for a member of parliament from a particular party, for example, you will automatically be voting for that party's presidential candidate, putting independent candidates at a great disadvantage. As expected, the final results came in at 64% for the incumbent Ali Bongo and 30% to his main rival Albert Ondo Osa.
Some Gabonese are also concerned about last-minute changes to electoral laws and the decision to lock out international observers and foreign journalists. They say they're not confident that the election will be free or fair. Albert Ondo Oso was endorsed by an opposition coalition called Alternance 2023. The grouping of 6 presidential candidates recently united.
What is going on is not really the expression of a free and fair election when the polling stations are not open in time, where there is this absence of polling stations in several localities in Gabon and outside of Gabon.
In 2016, the presidential poll was disputed. Violence broke out. Several people were killed and many injured.
But it might be more beneficial for us to go further back and provide some background on the Bongo family rule.
President Ali Bongo Ondimba is seeking a third term in office. His family has dominated Gabon's politics for nearly 6 decades. His late father, Omar Bongo, was president for 42 years. He died in 2009, and his son took over.
His father had served as president from 1967 until 2009 and was the world's longest ruling leader. In 2009, Ali Bongo took control of his father's political dynasty after 41 years of power. By the end of his rule, he had sired over 50 children and placed them in key positions in Gabon's government and economy. During his 41-year rule, Omar Bongo had acquired some 40 luxury properties in France, 66 bank accounts, and over 180 cars. To give you an idea of his vast wealth, the former president moved $100 million in funds through a single New York City bank account from 2003 to 2007. Following in his father's footsteps, when the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists published the Pandora Papers, an explosive investigation involving 29,000 offshore companies and $9.7 trillion in hidden wealth, Ali Bongo himself was found to have 2 offshore shell companies in the British Virgin Isles. But many forget, President Ali Bongo played a key role in the intervention in Libya in 2011. Back in 2011, when the international community had met numerous times to try and deal with the situation that was unfolding and worsening day by day, the UN Security Council met to try and pass a number of resolutions. The UN Security Council has 5 permanent members, and those 5 get to vote on the 10 non-permanent members who are rotated out yearly. The US had just put its support behind Gabon, and they were finally able to join. When it came down to 2 key votes, Gabon was eager to vote in the affirmative. The first was in February 2011. All 15 members passed UN Security Council Resolution 1970, imposing a litany of sanctions, travel bans, and asset freezes. The second vote was far more critical. The Security Council requires 9 affirmative votes to pass the resolution, with permanent members maintaining veto power. On March 17th, the Security Council adopted Resolution 1973, with 10 members, including Gabon, voting in the affirmative and 5 abstaining. The resolution included the following: a demand of the immediate establishment of a ceasefire. It imposed a no-fly zone over Libya, and it authorized all necessary measures to protect civilians in civilian-populated areas under threat. Days after the vote on March 19th, an international force led by NATO executed an 8-month campaign dropping an estimated 7,000 bombs and toppling the Libyan leader.
So, I mean, that is the land of unfulfilled. We came, we saw, he died. Did it have anything to do with your visit? I'm sure it did.
For now, General Nguema has committed to constitutional reform to be adopted by referendum, new electoral codes, and more democratic and respectful human rights. He is also committed to overhauling the pension program in order to tackle a buildup of unpaid pensions plaguing the senior population. As for the deposed president, the coup leaders announced his release and stated he had the freedom to leave the nation if he desired. They also later announced the release of a number of political prisoners, granting them amnesty.
Given his state of health, the former president of the Republic, Ali Bongo Ondimba, has freedom of movement. He can travel abroad if he wishes to carry out his medical checks.
This announcement follows lengthy negotiations between the junta and the Economic Community of Central African States. Its representative, President Touadéra from the Central African Republic, was tasked with meeting all Gabonese actors and partners of the country with the goal of providing a rapid return to constitutional order.
That's right, Anastasia. He seems to be putting word to action by freeing all these political prisoners, notably 3 of them, the former mayor of Libreville, a high official from the Bongo regime, and this unionist, this very famous unionist in Gabon, Nguema, who came out from prison after spending 2 years in detention for being critical of Ali Bongo, saying this is a new beginning for the country.
Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for some more upcoming videos, and I appreciate the suggestions on some topics to cover. Also, if you missed our previous video breaking down the recent coup in Niger, you can click the box up here. Once again, we are Terra Gazette, an independent news channel hoping to bring you fair and balanced coverage of global events. Until next time.